Well, good morning, dear friends. Decided to have some hot tea. That's only because the coffee's already gone. Thank you, friends, for clicking on this video. And before I get out and get some numbers for you regarding the two gunpowders that I'm going to test, that I blended, the charcoal, I just kind of want to express a few thoughts, okay? I recognize over the past several months I've gotten quite a few new subscribers, and once again, thank you, and I appreciate all the old subscribers that continue to watch what I present on this channel. For the benefit of the new subscribers, you may not have watched enough videos to hear me make certain statements about how I feel about things. One of the statements that I make continuously is that I think in different terms. Okay? And when I say that, it's not that I think better than anybody else, but I tend to think more from a critical perspective. And I'll qualify this. I've made statements before on this channel that I feel chronographs do nothing more than feed the male ego. Now let that sink in for just a moment. Chronographs, in my opinion, do nothing more than feed the male ego. Okay? Few years back, I went on a squirrel hunt with some buckskinning buddies of mine, and at that time, I was screening my gunpowder. I had not learned that pucking is a much better way to go. And you can go back on this channel and you can see, the whole progression of myself learning the ins and outs of homemade black powder. Okay? And so after that squirrel hunt, I had a bunch of that screened black powder left, and if I remember correctly, I believe it was willow that I had taken on that squirrel hunt. And so I gave up the powder that I had left in my powder horn to another buckskinner, and he thanked me for doing it, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was, "I can't wait to shoot this through a chronograph. I want to see what this does." In my opinion, chronographs just give a person a general feel for what their bullets are doing. You can use the same chronograph to shoot arrows through, and you can see how many feet per second your bow is shooting. Okay? And a lot of that sometimes depend on your anchor point. If you have an anchor point at the corner of your mouth, some guys go back to here, but you can shoot through a chronograph. And I've seen it in the archery world. Man, I got a bow here that shoots a 27-inch arrow, 167 feet per second. World record-breaking shot. No, because you could take the next shot and you could be 10 or 15 feet per second less. So for me, shooting through a chronograph is nothing more than just getting a general feel for a certain thing. Okay? Let me qualify this even further to show you that I don't put my ego into this. And this is why from time to time I continue to quote what Paul Harrell says. I recognize not all chronographs agree. Temperature and elevation will give you different numbers, and even the time of day. When I do all of my shooting through my chronograph to give you guys these numbers so you can get a general feel for what's going on, it's always between quarter. I usually start setting up my range at 9:30. By 10 o'clock I'm ready to go, and then by noontime I'm done. So you can see from 10 to 12 there is a huge difference in the rising of the temperature. Huge difference. That's why I get all kinds of readings through my chronograph. Some high, some real low. But it gives you a feeling for what is happening. And something else that you have to recognize, and I'll show this directly in a moment. The caliber of your rifle and the length of your barrel makes a big difference, okay? Let me emphasize, or let me qualify this. The first time I tried shooting my cherry gunpowder, I made with the cherry as the charcoal, the first shot I got through that chronograph was 2,083. Now that's 80 grains by weight, but I'm going through a 42-inch barrel with a 50 caliber round ball, .490. If I was the braggadocious type of person, I'd have just left it at that, but I'm not. The next shot through it was 2,032, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'm onto something with this cherry. Then my next shot was 1958. Wow, that's pretty good because, I do recognize over, the time that I've been using this chronograph, numbers do vary. Then my next shot was 1902, and I said, oh God, this is getting worse. Why? Well, clean barrel. Okay. Now, I threw out those numbers. I did some more reshooting, and I just settled on 1902, but I had a spread of 370 feet. That's unacceptable. But you get a general feel. You're right around that 1900 foot per second mark. And granted, it's a 42-inch barrel, and you have to understand that extra barrel length is allowing you, even with a thermal runaway, it's still allowing you for those pressures and gases to build up. Let me qualify that and show you the difference. So I retested that cherry through my Great Plains with a 32-inch barrel. Now granted, the projectile weighs a little bit more, but you also have 40 thousandths of space, well, thereabouts, because the round ball that I shoot is .490 in my 50 caliber with a 20 thousandths patch, and in my Great Plains I shoot a .530 with a 15 thousandths patch. But all in all, you have more space, thousandths wise, for that powder to build up. It's taking a little bit more time, and if I had a high-speed camera, you very easily see that. You could very easily measure that. So again, my Great Plains, 80 grains by weight, same gunpowder, made with the cherry as the charcoal, 32-inch barrel. First shot through a clean barrel, 1597. Second shot, 1598. Third shot, 1564. Then my fourth shot, I went right back up to 1590 and then 1581. But yet when I shot that same gunpowder through my Great Plains, I got over 2,000 feet a second. That's why I feel chronographs do nothing more than feed the male ego, because I could have been extremely braggadocious about the 2083, but then when I retested it through my Great Plains, crap, I didn't even get 1,600 feet a second. I guess that's some weak-ass gunpowder. Not. See, it does nothing more than just give you, friends, a general feel for what your gunpowders are capable of doing. Okay? For instance, with the gunpowder I made with the alder, 80 grains by weight in my flintlock. First shot, 1,777. Wow, even that did better than my Great Plains at 1590. See, the gun barrel, the length and the caliber can make a huge difference in any of these numbers that are being, projected at you. Okay? Now, when I did the same test with the alder, okay, first shot out of my Great Plains, 80 grains by weight, same gunpowder, 1617. Oh my God, 100 feet less per second. So my whole thing about this is I'm not letting these numbers feed my ego, because I recognize that from gun to gun, the time of day, the elevation, and not all chronographs are going to agree. So I kind of just give you guys the raw numbers, and that's why I always say, you guys decide for yourself. I'm not going to tell you how to make the best of the best, the fastest of the fastest, the cleanest of the cleanest. Decide for yourself, and don't measure your gunpowder by what I do or what someone else does. Because in my opinion, when you start to judge your gunpowder, the performance and the clean burning, by someone else's measure, I personally feel you're doing yourself a disfavor. Now, second point, milling time. And because I've gotten so many new subscribers, a lot of the questions underneath my certain videos is better. The longer you mill it, the better gunpowder you get. The longer you mill it, the better gunpowder you get. Well, if that was really true, then how is it that when I milled the cherry, and I've kind of changed things just a little bit, but I'm putting this into a perspective, okay? So when I milled my cherry at 36 hours, first shot got 2,083. The same cherry milled 36 hours out of my Great Plains got 1,597. Does the longer mill time really make a difference? Not in my book. I think in different terms. Okay? But for the benefit of those that are unacquainted with what I've done and showed and presented on this channel, I mill my black powder for 30 plus hours. Okay? And I'm going to go into my shop, and I'm going to let you listen to something, and I'll explain how I do it. Okay? Boy, that sun is just right to be wrong. In my milling process, and I'll turn the mill on and I'll exemplify this so that you can see what I listen to and how I do it. But when I first started making gunpowder, everybody making gunpowder at that time in a rubber jar would state, once all the gunpowder is compacted on the bottom of the jar, your gunpowder's done. Now, it may only take 10 hours to do that. Might take 15 hours to do that. What I discovered doing that is that where I placed my jar determined how quick that gunpowder started compacting on the bottom. If I had that jar in the shade, maybe even during the winter, it would take longer for that gunpowder to compact on the bottom of that rubber jar. Taking the same jar, putting it in milling gunpowder in the sun, compacted twice as fast. So, in my experience, that's not necessarily the best way to determine whether your gunpowder is properly milled or not. Now, I get it. You don't need to put comments down below. Well, I add a little water and I do this. This is how I do it. Okay? This is how I do it. I don't do it the way someone else is instructing to do it, because what I learned early on by somebody removing the lid, look, it's all compact, it's done. I quickly decided and learned, because I think in different terms, but if it's only compacted, say, for 8 to 10 hours, is it thoroughly compacted, or did that compaction trap some of the less compacted material on the bottom of the jar? That's how I think. And in time, I ended up having to change out that rubber jar just simply because the lid, the rubber lid, started, ripping apart. So I made a PVC jar. Let me get that real quick. Right here. Okay. And I ended up having to split the 4-inch PVC so that I could get the size of all of this to fit inside of my mill. Okay. And I also took a horse rasp, heated it up, and I put these little dimples in it so that the rollers can grab it a lot better than just sit there and slip. Okay. When I made this, I also put 3 pieces of PVC glued on the inside so that it can act as a step to throw the ball onto the gunpowder. Help facilitate the compacting of it, okay, instead of just the balls rolling around. And I only put 3 because I want to be able to hear the sound difference. And I understand sound difference. For the benefit of those that don't know, I've been a drummer all my life. I understand hearing music change, which indicates to me what I need to do as a drummer. Okay, so I understand. I listen to sound. And that sound tells me, oops, I need to do something. The same holds true with this. That's why I put 3 steps in it and not 4. Because once it gets to that point where there's no step, the sound changes. But there's also something else involved with this. So let me get this, because this has been running for a couple hours already, and let me just backtrack a little bit. I mill my gunpowder for 3 days, not continuously. I get out here about 5:30, 5:45 every morning when I'm milling gunpowder and turn my mill on. At the end of the day, typically around 7 o'clock, I shut her down, and I know how many hours this gunpowder has been milling. You do that for 3 days, in your 12 plus hours, you're up around 36, 37 hours in a mill time. But during that mill time, I do multiple things to ensure my gunpowder is being thoroughly milled. So I'm going to put this back in the ball mill, and I'm going to turn it on, and I want you to listen, if you can pick it up, the sound changes that I am referring to. So I'm hoping you guys can hear how loud that is. With the experience that I have, that's telling me the gunpowder is already compacted on the bottom of the ball mill, and the balls are just sitting on top. Now you guys can hear that kind of like that blank spot. You know, if you just train your ear to it, you can hear the difference in it and what it sounds like. Okay, now I'm going to show you what I do here, and you can appreciate why I do what I do and the reason why I do it. So at that point, I start knocking all that gunpowder loose. I don't need to open it up and check it because I can hear the difference. And I'll show that in just a moment. Okay? Then I'll shake it up just a little bit. Make sure that, you know, most of the gunpowder that's compacted is already knocked loose. Now, before I put this back on here and let you listen once again, when I get into the second day, during that next 12-hour period, twice I will take the lid off, empty the container out, and run it through a screen. Okay? And for the benefit of those that don't know, I use lead media. My lead media is 60-40 lead. In other words, for every 60 pounds of lead, there's 40 pounds of tin in it. And I've shown in previous videos in the past, I've been using the same lead media from day one. I can put it in my dial caliper, and a 490 round ball still reads .490. I've got, you know, different sizes in here. I've got a few 54s, a few 490s, and I have a bunch of 36 caliber. Now you might be asking why I've got black tape here. It's not to keep the lid on, because the lid is a very tight pressure fit. But with what I've discovered early on is if I don't tape the seam here, some of the powder does work its way to the top and then eventually trickles out through what would be the end of the end cap. Now this cap's glued on. I don't have that problem, but this is the lid that comes off. Okay, so I'm going to put this back on the ball mill and then listen to this change of sound. That's a lot quieter now, and it'll get even just a little bit more quieter in a moment. I know that I am re-milling or milling more thoroughly that gunpowder. And it'll run like that for another hour, hour and a half, and I'll come back out and check it, and I can hear, okay, it's compacted on the bottom because it's gotten real loud with the ball tumbling. Hear how much more quieter that is? Now I know that that gunpowder is continuing to properly mill. And I will do this for 3 days. So that's my process. I know everybody has a different way of doing it, and from what I've showed through my chronograph, you should be able to get a general sense that the way I do it, my gunpowder is getting milled long enough. And as I've said before, and I'll restate it here before I do the burn test on my blended gunpowder. If you're shot between the eyes or in the heart-lung area with a round ball that's traveling 1,400 feet per second, 1,500 feet per second, 1,600 feet per second, 1,700 feet per second, 1,800 feet per second, all the way up to 2,000. Which one of those round balls makes you more dead? I think in different terms. I don't buy into the male ego that a lot of men do when it comes to guns. And again, I've seen it even in the archery world. I've seen it even in the fishing world, because years ago, decades ago, I was a huge avid fly fisherman. Used to hand tie all my flies. I would read articles in Fly Fisherman magazine, and I would just see all the ego put into these articles. I've even made my own fly rods. Again, I try real hard to keep my ego out of there because I recognize certain values in life. Not everything is equal and everything changes from day to day. So, I'm going to get set up and I'm going to do some burn tests, and then I'm going to go set up my shooting range and get you guys some numbers, and you can take whatever value you want from it. I'm just doing this for the hell of it now because I'm retired, and for me this is just something fun to do. So I'm going to get set up. The first gunpowder I'm going to test is the gunpowder that I mixed with juniper and aspen, milled for 36 hours, pucked with a 1-inch die with, so many feet per square inch, or, centimeters per square inch of pressure, whatever. And then the next one I'm going to do is test the alder and the aspen. So I'm going to get set up and we'll see how they perform. Okay, here's 30 grains of the aspen juniper. I think you'd all agree that went up PDQ. Let me show you the block. Okay, like all my other gunpowders, the KN03 left behind is just minute. Some might say, yeah, that's real gritty. Well, there's a lot of smoke left behind. Well, you would expect that because charcoal is one of the ingredients in black powder. So you're always going to get a residue left behind. Just like you're always going to get those little chunks of KN03. But the size of those white flakes, white chunks, should be telling you something about your mill time. Not too bad, but more importantly, it went up pretty quick, didn't it? All right, I'm going to get this cleaned out. Well, actually, I got another block, so I'll just swap out blocks, reposition the camera, and then we'll test the other gunpowder. Here's 30 grains of the gunpowder that's blended with aspen and alder. That went up pretty quick, too. Let me show you the block. This is the fun part of what I'm doing. There's the block. Now, as I showed and explained before, this chunk right here is part of the match head. Okay? But, looking at the block of wood, from my perspective, feels just about as gritty. Very clean burning. And put the two blocks side by side. And you guys judge for yourself. But I will tell you from my perspective at least, the gunpowder I made with the aspen and the alder seems to be a little bit cleaner burning than with the juniper and aspen. Interesting. But unless you do stuff like this, are you really appreciative of what your gunpowder is doing as it's performing in your gun barrels? Somebody asked, why do you keep doing that? I do it for this reason, so that you can see. And one reason why I have a channel ground in the bottom of this, just to mimic, not fully mind you, because I understand that, but to mimic what a thermal runaway would look like, because the gunpowder that's sitting on the bottom of this channel would mimic a thermal runaway. Not precisely what it does in your gun barrel, but you kind of get a feel for what's really going on. I'm going to rub the other block a little bit more. Again, this is the juniper aspen. This is the aspen alder. And I'll tell you right now, right here, without showing any bias, I will say that the aspen alder burns a little cleaner, other than compared to the juniper aspen. And they're both milled the same length of time. So maybe in time, I might just start making all my gunpowder from the aspen and alder. But I won't know that for sure until I compare them through the guns and the chronograph, just to get a feel for what's taking place. So let's head on out there and I'll get you some numbers. $18.40. Now, just so that you all know what I'm doing, in previous tests with Swiss, we have discovered that 80 grains of Swiss in my RCBS scale actually weighs 87.5. So this aspen juniper gunpowder is being shot with 87.5 grains by weight, and on the scale you're about 95. Keep in mind, it's already 87.5, so we're already close to 90. So I'm going to get reloaded, get you another number. So I'm reloaded, ready to go. Decided to go look for that patch, just in case anybody's curious. There it is. It's not all that dirty compared to some of the other gunpowders I've shot. $18.14. And just to let you know, I didn't miss. I have the camera focused on the wrong clay pigeons. I'm going to scoot up and try to get you the one by itself. There's two. Where is it? There it is. There was one right next to it. I hit it. I just had the camera focus on the wrong one. I have not been able to recover either one of those two patches, and I'm having to readjust and shoot at funky angles just because of the sun's getting to the point to where it's gonna stop messing with the sensors. But here we go. I'm trying to stay at 25 yards, but because of the angle of everything right now, I'm actually shooting from behind the camera. Yep. Let me get your number and show you what I did. I pulled real bad. Or as you can see, it's swinging in the air. 1757. Let me go see if I can't straighten this out a little bit. And that's my greatest fear, just came true. This is why I like sitting down to shoot through a chronograph. Fortunately, I didn't take out the chronograph, just the rods, but it'll still work. Well, at least I found that patch. It must have hit one of the rods. But there it is. It's not all that dirty. That's shot number, what, shot number 4. Yeah, I'm starting to tear through just a little bit, but to be honest with you, I think that might be being done in the loading process. But anyhow, I'm going to go straighten this mess out and continue on. So I think from here on out, I'm just going to shoot off my elbow on the bench. Well, as you can see, I hit it, but I forgot to turn the chronograph on. Let me get reloaded, repositioned, and I'll try to get your number. Obviously, I'm a little too apprehensive about shooting across that chronograph, but you know, I've said this in a video before. That's one of the things that I don't like about shooting through a chronograph, is taking it out, because you know, in just a twinkling of an eye, you've just destroyed $135 worth of equipment. Let me get reloaded, and I'll get you another number and focus on the last 2 clay pigeons that are left. I hope you guys are laughing right along with me. Yes, I did turn on the chronograph. It was 1800 even. Now, personally, I don't think judging your gunpowder being dirty or clean is taking a few shots and running a wet patch down there, because once again, you're cleaning charcoal. You should expect to see dirty dark matter, but for those that are curious and those that just have to see, there's that first patch. It's not all that bad, guys. For just the first patch, I would have expected that to be a whole hell of a lot dirtier, but it's really not. But see, there again, take it with a grain of salt, judge it for yourself. I really don't care how you view this. But in my opinion, after 6 shots, that's not all that bad. I've seen worse, especially like with my cottonwood, the cholla cactus, and the barberry. So anyhow, I'm going to finish wiping this out, dry it out. And the reason I did this, I don't like to typically do this because I want to just see how many shots I can get before, you know, if I have to, you know, vent the touch hole or not. The reason I did this is just simply because I want the first shot with the next round of gunpowder, which is going to be the alder and aspen mixed. So anyhow, I'm going to finish cleaning it up. I'll get reset up and turn everything on and start getting you some numbers. So just so you can see, I'm still using a different flask, but I'm 87.5 grains to match what Swiss weighs. And you can see, hopefully, I'm just a little above the 90 grain mark. But again, 87.5, so that would already get you close to the 90 grain mark. So you can see that this gunpowder is perhaps maybe just a little bit heavier. I'm going to go get my chronograph moved and start getting you some numbers. I'm sure that's still a little wet. Bullseye. 1856. Just so that you can see, there's that clay pigeon, blew the center right out of it. 2, 3. Just to let you know, I couldn't find that patch. I saw where that one landed. Again, 1856. And by the way, I obliterated that clay pigeon. Just so that you all know, in between shots of me looking for the patch, reloading, I'm still pulling my chronograph back in the shade and I am shutting it off. Just in case anybody's curious. Punched a hole right through it. 1822. And there's that target. Blew the center right out of it. That's my last target on the embankment. I guess maybe I'll just keep the camera for... forget it. I'll give you a long range shot. Well, 1822. And I undershot it just a little bit. The clay pigeon's still up there. Get this last shot downrange and kind of assess things. What's that say? 1846? Yeah, it looks like it. I'm going to get it up a little closer because I got a lot of sun reflecting on the screen. Yep. 1846. I'm going to get you 2 more numbers. Hopefully they'll record 2 different numbers. And when I get into the shop, I'll do the average 2 different ways for you. $18.37. And I think I found what is the first patch. The reason I know is because I swapped to my white patches so I could identify them. If I couldn't find one, I found the other. But that would be wrapped around the ball. You can clearly see the imprint. And this would be the side sitting on top of the powder. But hey, judge for yourselves. I'm going to get loaded up and get you that last number. $19.05. So I guess I'm going to pack everything up and we'll have it a short parlay in my shop. $19.05. Okay, I'll try to get through this before the battery dies. So how do we do? Well, with the Aspen Juniper blended charcoal, got an average of 5-shot average of 1808 with a spread of 72. With the Aspen Alder blend, 5-shot average was 1853 with a spread of 83. It's only a 45-foot difference. Not really all that much, in my opinion. But just going back over some of my other numbers when I did the test regarding purifying the KNO3 or not, I used the Aspen by itself, pucked with a 1-inch die, but 80 grains by weight. Okay, it was not the same as Swiss by weight and volume. This was 80 grains by weight of Aspen. 5-shot average, I got an average of 1716. So obviously I gained about another 100 feet per second plus by blending the Aspen with the Juniper and blending the Aspen with the Alder. In my book, that's a huge difference. It really is. But when I shot the gunpowder that I made with cherry as the only source of the charcoal, throwing out those 2,000 feet per second numbers and kind of balancing everything out, I probably should redo that. But even at that, I got a 5-shot average of 1902. So it's actually 100 feet more per second, but I'm not willing to accept that just simply because I had a 370 deviation in spread. So that's, in my book, guys, that's not a fair comparison. It's really not. But I will be anxious to get out there and try cherry once again if I have enough, because I'm only making a 100 gram batch, and by the time I shoot 80 grains and then have to reshoot some of the oopses and stuff, I don't have a whole lot left. But asking you guys a question, if you were out deer hunting or elk hunting, which shot would be the single most important? Well, obviously it's the first shot. So even with the aspen juniper at a lower feet per second, that first shot still managed to get 1,840 feet going down a clean barrel. Okay? And with the aspen alder blend, the first shot was 1,856. Either one of those shots would have done the job. No question about it, as long as you placed your shot in the proper place. So anyhow, guys, I want to thank you for watching. I appreciate you guys giving the thumbs up and sharing it with your bestest of buds. And I've got a lot of numbers here now that I can actually kind of look over and you know, do some comparing. So I want to thank everybody for watching, and have a great day. Bye.